Hello and welcome to A Fan Reads Bantha Tracks. Today we're going to read Bantha Tracks issue number 17, August 1982. And this one seems to have an interview. You know how we feel about interviews. They could be so boring. But who knows, maybe this will be exciting. Well, let's just delve right into Bantha Tracks issue 17 with an interview with Ben Burt. Shall we begin? When did you first become interested in sound effects? I've been recording movies and television shows since I was 6. Sound was always a part of my movie making, but I didn't think it was a career. I was responsible for recording, editing, and most of the mixing of the sound on Star Wars. On Empire, I touched everything in some way, with a 10-week deadline. We're mixing a rough cut of Jedi right now. Will we see any new sound technology in Revenge of the Jedi? Our new sound facility has rugs, lights, a little more space, and 2 new important sound features. First, our main dubbing theater with its well-researched technology will ensure the high quality of our sound. We will be able to do all our sound work here, not just the cutting and mixing. Second, my sound effects section is especially designed to invent sounds, to create sounds. We use the same equipment as any film sound studio, but we're geared for one person to do many steps. How do you design an individual sound effect to fit a visual effect? The Star Wars soundtracks are designed in an exaggerated comic book style where a face punch is no little tap, it's an explosion. In Star Wars, even the hand lasers cause enormous explosions. When it came time to blow up the Death Star, I had a real problem. I couldn't make the explosions any bigger. Sound can be designed in different ways. In the Star Wars saga, you want to hear a spaceship really slicing through the ether. To design that sound, I inspect what the ships look like, how fast it moves, and what it does, and develop my own concept of how it should sound. Then combine subtle little bits that sound almost like a race car or almost like a jet plane. Not close enough to identify consciously, but if the sound effect is designed correctly, then the emotional association will be there. What are your sound files like? The sound library is the heart of our operation. We have a wall full of tapes of Wookiees, automobiles, explosions, motors, large and small, electrical effects, countless categories organized alphabetically by subject like an encyclopedia. Every sound has to be labeled and located in the files, but classifying sound is very hard. A good sound designer is always anticipating, planning ahead, and building up his sound library. Our first Jedi expedition was last September, when we recorded the sound for an enormous door that opens in an early scene. I remembered an ammunition dump with a large old iron door that had been sitting, rusting since World War II. It opened with a squeaky kind of scrape. That'll be my basic door sound, and once I add an earthquake rumble and some other things, it'll seem like an even bigger and better door caricature. Any anecdotes about what goes into a Star Wars episode? I tracked down an old movie scream I loved as a kid. I call it a Wilhelm, after a character in an old western who got an arrow in his leg and let out that scream. Every time someone died in a Warner Brothers movie, they'd scream this famous scream. That scream gets in every picture I do as a personal signature. In Star Wars, the stormtrooper who pitches off the Death Star screams that scream. In Empire, a Wilhelm was screamed during the Hoth battle. In Star Wars, we used explosions from the original Flash Gordon serial to pay homage to those who came before us. The mosquito-faced alien who tracked Luke and Ben Kenobi through Mos Eisley used the voice of a well-known Western actor. I took an old loop line where the actor says something like, "All right, fertilize the water," and ran it through the synthesizer until it came out zip whoop new. The unintelligible alarm signal from the Probot in Empire was the voice of a well-known Shakespearean actor totally changed electronically. I generally don't use sounds from other sources, but on occasion I like to throw fun things in. I don't think anybody could figure out who they were originally. Are some scenes so packed with laser blasts, exploding Death Stars, and other sound effects that the total amount of sound saturates the recording limits of the soundtrack? Our biggest technical problem when we make busy, loud movies is getting everything to define and read correctly. If Marquand shoots a scene where the actor is talking while shooting his gun, then right in the middle of the dialogue the audience sees a full frame of the gun blasting. If you have no sound effect for the gun, then your audience sees a giant soundless explosion. But if you put in an explosion, will they still hear the lines? Sound editing is a constant stream of little problems like that. The sound editor has to work out what his audience will hear and what they won't scene by scene, and do it in such a way that unusual sounds or sounds you left out won't distract his audience from their involvement in the story. What sound effects are the hardest to produce? Characterizations are absolutely the hardest. It's one thing to invent an explosion or show an X-Wing fighter passing by, but those are really isolated, technical achievements. To do a characterization like R2-D2, I had to sit down and create a performance that has credibility. In a scene where R2 talks with Alec Guinness, how R2 sounds is going to affect the performance of everyone in that scene. You agonize over characterizations bit by bit. If a character appears for just a moment and ugs or args or screams and weeps, that is one thing, but if the character hangs around talking, that's a serious problem. What goes into a particular howl of Chewie's? One thing I've discovered about voices and creature sounds to make them believable, you have to keep the sounds consistent with something you hear every day. That is especially true of Chewie. What works best is very pure, very simple sounds. Chewbacca's voice is predominantly one bear in combination with a few other sounds, which helps to keep his voice consistent from one reel to the next. We spend our lives learning to identify sounds, especially voices. It's almost impossible to disguise a voice speaking English effectively enough to make it unrecognizable. The average person's ear can still tell if that voice is a man, that one's a woman, if he's 80 years old, but she's only 2. Simplicity works more successfully than trying to blend things together. If you add 2 voices together, it doesn't make one believable third voice. You get a result that is to your ears what a double exposure is to your eyes. Who is your favorite Star Wars character? I have fun becoming each character for a brief period of time. I've only had one particular favorite, R2-D2. R2 caused the most work because you invent him from nothing. I suppose R2 is the one that I spend the most time on. He's so abstract. I inch my way along by saying, well, what would R2 sound like in this case? R2 really hasn't had much of a part since Star Wars, so he's not quite as interesting to do anymore.
It's Wampa Cave. Look's inside. We better get him out. Arg! Wampa!
Introducing Hoss World. 3 playsets in 1. New from Star Wars Micro Collection line. 19 die-cast figures and action poses included.
Wow, they're small enough to fit in one hand. Yeah, pow! So much for throwback surprise. It's safe, Chewie. Arg! We can get back to Hop Eye and Cannon. Hey, it connects to Hop Wampa Cave. Han's here. Close blast doors. Raise Rebel Soldier in observation tower. Empire's approaching, Princess Leia. Activate Iron Cannon. They're bombarding our base. Quick, connect to the Hop generator attack. They're headed in with Scout Walker and Stormtroopers. Scout Walker's hit, sir. Aim for the generators, men. Good work. The world of Hop is ours! Yeah!
Hoss World from Star Wars Micro Collection line. Playsets also sold separately. Figures included. New from Kenner.
What's your favorite sound effect? My tastes vary. It's pretty esoteric, but I'd say my favorite sound effect was made by the Arrows in the 1938 version of The Adventures of Robin Hood. I just love that sound effect. What's your least favorite sound effect? The telephone ring that Universal Studios has used since time began. They still use it every day on every show. That one particular recording of the ultimate phone ringing. How many different elements do you add together to make a film? Every film's different. That's hard to break down statistically. The Empire Strikes Back had 1,000 different recording projects. Each project was of a different size. The sound of the Hoth hangar door closing was a project. The TIE Fighter's swoosh was a project. The Wookiee howls were a project. There's really no way I can estimate how many different sounds went into Empire other than thousands. If a movie has 1,000 recording projects, each involving 100 elements, the only way to estimate that would be to weigh the tapes. How closely do you coordinate the sound effects with the producers? On Star Wars, George and I worked very closely together. He was very concerned about the sound effects because he didn't know what I was capable of. That's understandable. I didn't know myself. Every week he'd come in and we'd go over everything I'd done. After Star Wars succeeded, George left things up to the sound department. Now we spend 15 minutes discussing the soundtrack, then George attends the mix and passes judgment. He generally accepts what we do. His major concern is how the music sounds versus the effects and dialogue. Can he understand the lines, and is the music at a level he judges correct? Most of his effort went into the overall balance. George steps in and makes changes when he doesn't like something. Otherwise, it goes through. His job is too big for him to be everywhere. The main concern on Jedi has been the development of creature voices. Empire didn't have creatures that stepped out and played a scene without Guinness. They just ugged and arced. There's so much pressure on Jedi's principal shooting that no one's thinking about the soundtrack yet. Hopefully I will have enough temporary sounds to show them some coherent scenes. We're now mixing scenes with rough versions of voices and sound effects. Otherwise, the only thing on the soundtrack will be David Tomlin on the bullhorn saying, "Walk to the back, walk to the right, stop," and George's camera that sounds like a sewing machine. If you ever get the chance to hear a movie in raw form, do so. It's hilarious. On the Star Wars episodes, because of all the sound effects, goofy noises, and David Tomlin, there's no hope of getting a clean soundtrack. It all has to be thrown out and done over. I went on the set to see if I could make things better for sound and almost gave up. To get a film done within a reasonable cost and time, they just can't let sound be in that way. They know they can do it later. That's unfortunate because quality does suffer. Every scene between Luke and Yoda and Empire had to be looped later, not action scenes, but difficult, serious acting scenes. During looping, the main actors have to go back into the studio and repeat their lines and create that scene again. That was a struggle a year later. You lose spontaneity and naturalness. About half of the average Star Wars chapter is looped. Vader, C-3PO, and Yoda's voices are first recorded in the studio and then machine processed. None of the alien characters are looped. We record the voice separately and then mold and hammer until it fits. You can't relate it to the picture. It doesn't make sense to do those performances watching the picture because many of the sounds we use are animals recorded on a farm. You can bring a horse to the microphone, but you can't make him talk. You have to go out to the ranch and record it. We need so much looping because many of the actors don't speak in their characters' voices. Either they are wearing a mask or helmet where you can't record them, or their voices, like Darth Vader's, will be dubbed later by a different actor. We don't even attempt to get those voices down during shooting because they are thrown away. We concentrate on Luke and the others that can be used. Alright, let's see what else is inside this issue of Bantha Tracks number 17. Here's something that says, Jedi Production Part 2. Introducing Admiral Akbar. In Star Wars, Princess Leia leads only a small part of the Rebel Alliance. The commander of the entire Rebel fleet is Admiral Akbar, a member of the Mon Calamari race of highly intelligent master chess players from the water planet Dak. We'll see Admiral Akbar and the amphibious Mon Calamari in the next chapter of the Star Wars saga, Revenge of the Jedi. Message from the director. This issue of Bantha Tracks marks my first anniversary as director of the official Star Wars fan club. This is your fan club. If there is anything you want to see in Bantha Tracks, want to say, or want offered through the fan club, just drop us a line and let us know. We would appreciate a self-addressed sent envelope when you do. No, we're not going to answer the question, is Darth Vader really Luke's father, or tell you who gets the princess or the entire plot of Jedi, but we will have to do our best to answer every question you have. What else is in here? Let's see. With this backside here, we have Oh, this is the order form. So we have the official fan club T-shirt, and now they're selling Raiders of the Lost Ark stuff.
No.
This the Journal of the official Star Wars fan club. It says that right here. The official Star Wars fan club, but for some reason they're selling a Raiders of the Lost Ark one sheet. What's up with that? I don't want to see this. I want to see Star Wars. More and more Star Wars. But at least we have this. You can get the original, you can get a Star Wars one sheet. Looks like a re-release poster, and it says the original is back. Ooh, and it says extra. See the coming attraction of the next chapter in the Star Wars saga, Revenge of the Jedi. Wow. So cool. I think I want to get this poster. Okay, well, let's see what else is in here. More stuff to order. Got that. The poster album, decals, the jacket. Oh, here's a little cartoon here. It says, "Are you sure you got all of the right parts?" Oh, let's go. There's Twiki from Buck Rogers, and then there's a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica, and Daggett from Battlestar Galactica, and it looks like, I think that's the big head thing from, I think that's a robot from Forbidden Planet. They included a crossword puzzle. Very cool. Oh, here's another little bit of art. Oh, there's a little word search puzzle. Pretty cute. Here's some news. National Public Radio's exclusive 13-part adaptation of Star Wars returns to the airwaves this November as an exciting prelude to the February 1983 premiere of a new public radio series based on The Empire Strikes Back. NPR's version of Star Wars, starring Mark Hamill and Anthony Daniels, introduces new characters and events not appearing in the motion picture, including Princess Leia's meeting with her father on the planet Alderaan prior to her capture by Darth Vader, R2-D2's first encounter with C-3PO, Han and Chewie's clash with the Tatooine underworld, and Luke's pivotal relationship with his friend Biggs. Wow, that's a lot of information that wasn't in the movie. Survey! We'd like your opinion on two types of story of records. Type 1, narration. The story of Star Wars is a 33 1/3 RPM record with original dialogue, music, and sound effects from the movie. A narrator tells the story to aid the listener's understanding of the plot. Type 2, audio drama. Raiders of the Lost Ark. The movie on record also has original dialogue, music, and sound effects, but was created without narration so that the story would unfold directly in the listener's imagination, and audio drama. We would like to know which type of record you like best. Please drop a postcard or a letter to us. Please include your age. If you haven't heard the records yet, we'd still like to hear which would appeal to you most. Thanks for participating in our survey. I think I would like the narration. I have the Empire Strikes Back story on record, and it works. The narration works. I really like it. Revenge of the Jedi novelization. James Caan, whose current work, Poltergeist, is on the bestseller list, will adapt the Jedi screenplay into novelization form. Caan is a Valentine Del Rey author, and we first became interested in his work through his fantasy adventure novel, World Enough and Time, the first of a trilogy whose second title, Time's Dark Laughter, has just been published. In addition to his work as a writer, Caan is a Los Angeles emergency room doctor who served as a medical advisor on E.T., then was hired by Steven Spielberg to write the novelization of Poltergeist. Wow. Publication of the novelization of Jedi will be closely timed to coincide with the first American release of the film. Again, they're talking about renewals. When you renew, you get this really cool Empire Strikes Back poster. Oh, and there's this really cute cartoon at the end here with a tauntaun. All right. Well, that is it for issue 17 of Bantha Tracks. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you. Oh my God.